Thanks everybody for being here today. My name is Melissa Gill. I'm a physical therapist and CEO of On-Site Solutions Physical Therapy. And as part of our webinar series to always educate, let you know what's out there in the world of safety, information you need to have, and just continually wanting to educate the people that are in our space to prevent injuries and to making a safer and healthier workplace. And I have Tammy Lee with me today. Tammy, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I'm Tammy Lee. I'm the CEO of Zenith Therapies and Onyx Cool, and I'm zooming in from our manufacturing plant in Red Wing, Minnesota.
Awesome. So we're talking about companies based in Minnesota, products not only made in USA, but made in Minnesota. So that's always kind of fun. So terrific. So this is going to be kind of an open format. We have Steve working our IT technology piece. So if you have a question, please pop it in the chat. He'll stop us. But again, just as we're going, feel free to really just connect with us and to make it interactive. And it may feel a little weird that we're talking about heat-related issues when it's freezing cold outside. When the little kiddos last night trick-or-treating had to have on, the winter coats and gloves and all the stuff. But we thought this was a timely topic because a lot of our risk and safety and health people are making decisions for next year's budget and next year's plans. So we wanted to get this information out to you today. I really wanted to bring Tammy in to talk to you about some technology that really is in that PPE space. So when we're talking about things like, again, OSHA, safety, risk, all the things we're trying to do to make our employees safer and healthier, not everything is under our control. And this is a tough one because, hey, if people are overheated, we talk about making sure they're hydrated. You can't force somebody to drink more water. You can't force somebody to take care of their bodies, right? But when we're talking about cooling technologies, that's something that could be more easily implemented into your day-to-day. So let's talk about what we're going to go through a little bit today. So our agenda today, we're just going to go super high level on that OSHA National Emphasis Program on heat-related issues. They've had lots of information over the years, and they've just had some updates that have come to that program just this last summer. We're going to talk a little about heat exhaustion, heat-related issues, and what tools or what technologies can you use to, again, increase compliance and then hope that there's less issues with heat. And then we'll talk about when Tammy talks a little bit about the cooling products, that's her space. There's a science and a technology there that we'll definitely talk about. All right. So here, we'll send this information out. These are the hyperlinks that get you specific to, the top one there is for the NEP fact sheet. It's the one-page sheet that's to the right. It's something that can be easily printed and posted. But we always know you guys probably post great information, but how do we really engage with people? How do we make sure that they're doing all the things they should be doing? And the second link there has got some very specific information on the National Emphasis Program and what things you can do to show you're addressing this standard. So from this next part here, this comes specifically out of the information from OSHA, the one that just came out, the update this last summer in 2023. The National Emphasis Program is to identify and eliminate or reduce worker exposure to occupational heat-related illnesses and injuries in general industry, construction, maritime, and agriculture. So it's those industries specifically. And if you dig into the 41-page document, it'll actually tell you what next codes it's specific to. But again, an NEP is, when I've spoke with National OSHA before, these programs are really as an education for our safety professionals and a resource for our safety professionals. It's not looked at as something that is going to be cited. It's something that's looked at as they're going to have this information. Now, if you're listed under that general industry, construction, maritime, and agriculture, you have to dig in to see if there is something that could be a citation towards you. But we're not experts in OSHA. We're experts in how to keep the body healthy. So the way we broke down this information today is the 3 A's of heat safety. Number one, awareness. When is our risk high? And a really important point of the NEP is how are you communicating with your employees, right? Number two, what's the action plan? What are we going to do before, during, and after a risky heat day? And what products will be available, which we'll talk about cooling technologies today. And lastly, did the plan for the heat on that day go well? Are we adhering to the directives? Are we adhering to the education put out by OSHA? And are we just staying on top of it as much as we can? So let's dig right in. So awareness, this is information from the National Weather Service on heat indexes. And maybe this is something that everybody already knew. I liked that it was categorized in something that I can understand a little bit better. There's a caution, extreme, danger, and extreme danger. Now, for our safety professionals, it's not enough that you just know this information. It's something that we have to make sure that your employees or the people you're working with understand these 4 levels and that you have a plan in place to address these 4 levels. Another piece of this awareness is what is causing heat-related illnesses. So out of every other mammal in the world, right? Which is a dumb statement. Of course, we're all mammals in the world. Mammals in general. Humans are very unique in the fact that when we're overheated, that the body responds by getting back to that homeostasis, that balance that our body is looking for. It does so automatically without us thinking about it. So when we become overheated, we are very efficient at cooling our bodies, and that's when we sweat. That's a natural thing we don't think about. If you're a dog, you're going to be panting. If you're other animals, you're doing it a different way. But it's not something that we can control, and it is something our body becomes very, very efficient to. Our body also acclimates to temperatures, as you know. If you're from a hot state or a cold state, like it's getting cold in Minnesota, when I go down to Florida and maybe 70 degrees there, they think it's cold. I'm running around in shorts thinking it's so hot, right? Our body acclimates to those temperatures. So in saying all that, heat-related illnesses occur when the body cannot lose enough heat to balance the body, right? Weather conditions are a really important piece of that external portion of the heat, lack of air conditioning, and extreme temperatures. And side note, we sometimes think of heat-related areas to be outdoor temperatures, but I have definitely worked with companies that have big furnaces that are trying to melt metal, and people that have to wear the flame-resistant suits in the heat. So it's not just outdoor conditions. We can definitely have indoor conditions as well. Another piece of the awareness is, and this comes straight out of the information from the OSHA NFP, the most recent one, causes and contributors to heat stress. Now, I like this list because if you take this list and you educate your employees, you're adhering to the educational component that OSHA is looking for. So some risky things that can lead to heat stress is a strenuous work task, moving at a fast pace. So for example, if you're outside and you're in a hot climate, and we know shoveling is going to be a strenuous task, but if they're also required to do that at a fast pace, those 2 things together make a difference. Lacking access to cool water or a shaded area. And again, part of the statute was looking for, as the employer, are you making cold water close and accessible for your employees? Are you making sure they have access to shade and you're almost forcing breaks so they can cool down? Obviously, working in direct sunlight, that's going to be a risk. And this one I thought was really interesting. When we talk about the body getting acclimated to heat, if you have a new employee, maybe they're not yet acclimated to the heat. If you have an employee that's maybe a little bit older and their body isn't responding as quickly as a younger body would to getting that homeostasis or that balance, that may be a risk as well. But the biggest risk is having physical activities or tasks required in a hot environment. Also under that awareness piece, so heat-related illnesses, on the bottom there, kind of that light is having a heat rash, heat cramps, fainting, heat exhaustion, and the worst thing with the most concern should be that heat stroke. So we want to really educate people and make sure it stops early, which is making people awareness of what a heat rash is, or if they're just feeling really thirsty, color of their urine, all that stuff as we move on. That heat rash, that can be that prickly, red, bumpy, the skin ducts becomes blocked or swell. So again, the treatment for that is to rest and keep your skin dry and clean. So for some people that maybe if they have a shirt that's it's not breathing or a breathable fabric or material, they may switch that shirt throughout the day. And I've definitely had some employers that people switch shirts throughout the day just to get fresh, cool clothing.
Melissa, can I ask a question quick?
Yeah.
On the previous slide, when it comes to heat illness, is that a progression or is it just different things that can happen in level of severity?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't want to give an answer that I'm not exactly positive about.
I can jump in on that because that was actually my slide. So that is not necessarily a progression. People can go straight into heat stroke or heat exhaustion without ever having that heat rash in the very beginning. So these are just varying levels of severity of how they affect our coworkers and employees.
Awesome. Thanks, Tammy. Let's move to that next one. I found something really interesting. I was at the NSC last week, the National Safety Council, and I think it's really interesting that with this heat cramping piece, right, drinking electrolytes and fluids as that treatment, there's a lot more products there on the marketplace. I did find one group that they had a sugar-free additive to water that did not have electrolytes. And I just asked them, like, why doesn't it have electrolytes? And they were just saying because a lot of the drinks do, and obviously you want electrolytes when you sweat too much to bring that, again, to replenish the body to make sure all those minerals are in the body properly. But they don't have to drink those all day long necessarily. So just adding an additive to the water with a little bit of flavor, a little bit of caffeine, not a lot, that was just increasing people's tolerance to drink water because a lot of people just don't like drinking plain water, right? There's a lot of things, by the way, that can cause cramping. Heat is just one, but there's some medications that can cause cramping. An overworked, overused muscle can cause cramping. But again, you don't want to get to that piece where you're actually going to have some level of IV or anything else. We're trying to stop it early. Anything you want to add to that one, Tammy?
No, all good.
All right. This next one I think is really, really important. And as a safety professional is talking about that buddy system or making sure we have people checking in with each other. Because in these labor industries where we have a lot of very stoic people and stoic personalities, they may not want to tell the person next to them, hey, I'm not feeling well. I feel like I'm going to faint, right? So we want to make sure we bring an awareness to that and we have that buddy system where we give them that awareness and allow them to check in with each other. How are you feeling? How are you doing before somebody faints? Because if that happens, the safety piece that goes along with that is somebody hitting their head? Are they in a dangerous situation or dangerous area? So really, we want to just check in with people. Treatment for that, obviously, is if they can lay down, elevating their legs to help bring that blood flow going back to their heart, back to their head, back to their organs is good. Rehydrating, but I'll say rehydrating, if they get to this piece, is really about taking very, very small sips. Too much may make them want to vomit, but so just making sure we're taking small sips at this piece or at this time. And then also monitoring the vital signs, making sure that they're, again, just their body is replenishing that fluid and they're getting back to that baseline. But if they're to the point of fainting, it's not going to come back quickly. Their body needs to have time to restore those fluids and the blood flow. Heat exhaustion. We do not want to get to the point of heat exhaustion. If you look in the red there, this is where we really want to start seeking medical attention. This is when they're having loss of fluids and salts. Again, like we talked about those electrolytes. They may feel weak, dizzy, or nauseous. Again, if somebody is in a physical type job and they're feeling weak, dizzy, or nauseous, this can lead to so many other safety concern. So we really want to watch for that. Heavy sweating, I've also heard no sweating at that point because they've just lost so many fluids, so much in fluids that they're not, some people aren't sweating even at that point. We want to have them rest in a cool place, lie down, drink electrolytes. Again, there's so many products that are on the marketplace now. Gatorade and Powerade are some. There's also tons of additives that people add to their drinks that are very specific for those electrolytes. And again, really making sure at this point that we're seeking medical attention. Heat stroke, again, this is when the body just cannot, it cannot regulate. This one definitely when the person stops sweating because there's no more fluids left to go, right? They may feel really hot, they're confused. So this is where the buddy system really comes in well, because it could be like, how are you doing? And if they seem off, then you really want to check in with those people. Like if they just don't answer, I've seen people that started slurring their words, or maybe they were asked a direct question, they didn't answer, because at this point they may be too far down the path to even know what's happening to them. And this is going to be a medical emergency 911. If you have somebody that's just not answering questions, they just seem like they're so off that we're really nervous, keep them cool. Do not give fluids, because at this point in time, the body's too far off that equilibrium, but definitely call 911 in this case. Real quick, this is something that it's really accessible out there just to post, but I would do this, not just posting it for employees, but also just going through explaining what this means and making sure that people have the awareness, they know what to do in each one of the situations. Everyone's favorite, let's talk about urine. Let's talk about urine. I've seen this little chart before as it relates to beer, which everyone gets a chuckle out of, where, you know, the Bud Light is at the light pale straw color, and then the darkest where you are dehydrated and the urine's a very dark color, like that's your Guinness. You don't want to be at a Guinness. You want to be either that white or that very light color. It seems really weird talking to people about urine, but this is the quickest way to assess if the body is hydrated enough throughout the day. If people have not urinated at all through most of the day, I'd be concerned about that as well, because again, they are probably getting rid of the fluids. They're just sweating. But at this point, we want to make sure their body is still producing urine because they are taking enough fluids. Action plan. Now, this is really an important piece because this comes from OSHA on the National Emphasis Program. Things that they're looking for specifically is these 10 things. And again, we'll get this out to everybody. They want a written program. They want you guys have something written down to address and educate employees. They want proof that you're monitoring temperatures and also levels of exertion. So again, if there's some level of somebody shoveling and they're supposed to be shoveling a certain size by a certain amount of time, giving people more time to do that and showing that you've modified the tasks or the rate of the task to make sure people have enough time to rest. Unlimited cool water that's accessible. So those are the important words there. Unlimited, accessible. Throwing out a case of water that's getting warm in the sun, that's not going to work. Additional breaks for hydration. Some of our construction companies have actually made that more of a mandatory break. Everyone stops, take your break. It should be scheduled, and they should have access to those shaded areas. Number 7, I thought was really interesting, which is giving people time to acclimate to those hotter temperatures. So for a new employee or returning workers, or maybe even somebody that is a little bit older, making sure they have time to get used to those temperatures before they have the same level of output required as everybody else. Also documenting you have a buddy system in place. Again, that you have people checking in with each other, making sure that they're doing okay, asking those questions. If they're, again, not answering those questions right, or their words are slurring, or they seem off, making sure employees know they need to talk to you in safety or their supervisor right away if that's happening, because that could then be moving towards more of that heat illness, heat stroke area. Administrative controls to limit heat exposure. So again, later work times, job rotations, We'll talk in just a minute with Tammy and cooling vests and inserts that are an administrative control as far as being more like a PPE. And training on heat illness and signs and symptoms of first aid and what to do. So making sure people know, here's the signs and symptoms and here's what you have to do. Okay, I think is there anything different in this one? I think we've talked about this one. Tammy, anything to add in here?
Nope. I think we
Okay.
put one too.
I think we have to. Okay, next.
These slides have the more the treatment side of things highlighted.
Okay. Okay.
And we just kind of went through those.
We did. Let's pop over. I'm super.
Oh, Melissa, you're on mute.
Steve muted me. How dare he? Now's a really good time for us to switch things over a little bit. I've met Tammy years and years ago. I think it's really great to have a product that we can talk about that can help prevent. You can't make people drink, right? But you can give them some technology to keep them cool. And so I want to pitch this over to Tammy and have her talk about kind of that cooling technology, the differences between all of the cooling technology so we can understand this a little bit better. Because at the NSC last week, I did see some products out there. ASSP national event, I saw lots of products, but they're not all created the same, are they, Tammy?
That's right. And we're going to talk about the differences in technologies and why we kind of recommend one technology over another. So I'm happy to be joining you, Melissa. Thank you for having me here today. I think the big question for the day is, besides complying with these regulations, why do we really care as workers? Well, of course, we care about the safety of the workers that we work with, but really heat stress costs a lot of lives and a lot of money if we don't properly prepare a written plan, educate our workers, and get ready to address it. So heat stress can cause up to $100 billion a year in lost productivity costs. So not only is it the right thing to do for the workers, it's the right thing to do for your company's bottom line. So we'll go to the next slide. The other big reason, Melissa touched on it earlier too, is that heat stress can actually cause more accidents in the workplace. So when you're tired, you lose strength, you become more fatigued, it can reduce your comprehension, you can become dizzy. All of these things can cause slip and fall risks, as well as additional injuries. So that's one of the reasons that we want to address this kind of upfront. So really, prevention is the best medicine, and that's having your written plan, educating your workforce, and having some of these other administrative and operational controls in place. So let's talk about those hierarchy of controls. And these are some of the key components of your safety plan or training programs as you're writing this out. So there are certain things that are physical fixes that you can do in the workplace. And this is better ventilation systems. These are having areas where you can have air conditioning. And these are areas that are designated as those shade break areas. These are physical fixes. But there are a lot of administrative or procedural fixes that you can do too as part of your written plan. And Melissa touched on some of these, such as scheduling the heavy, really fatiguing exercise for either cooler times of the year, which is impossible in some parts of the country, or trying to do that earlier in the morning. In fact, a lot of companies in high heat areas are now starting their workers at 5 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. or later and just shortening the workday. It's also scheduling in more frequent breaks and reducing the physical demand to the extent possible for workers. And then, of course, alternating staff in and out so that not everybody's in a high heat area. And then finally, providing that protective or preventative cooling gear. And we'll talk about those different solutions now. So, of course, there's hydration. We already talked about that. It's adding the electrolytes or flavoring to the water to just get people to drink more. And on the next slide, I'm going to ask a question of you, and you can put the answer in the chat here. If you could go to the next slide, please. How often, if you're in high heat, how often do you think you should stop for a drink? Melissa, do you have any ideas?
I mean, I would say I don't know, once an hour is my guess.
Actually, it's more frequent than that. If you go to the next slide, every 15 to 20 minutes, you should take in a little bit of hydration. And that's possible if you've got a water bottle next to you, or you have something kind of close by. And having access to that cool water is really important to have. But for sure, Melissa, once an hour to get as much hydration in as you can. Next slide, please. So the next thing we're going to talk about are different types of cooling vests, and I'm going to go over the different technologies now. So there are lots of different types of cooling vests. You've seen evaporative-based vests. Those are ones that you can dump in water, but they require airflow to be able to actually cool you. The second type of vest is an ice-based vest where you actually put it in a freezer, or gel packs that you put in a freezer and then insert into something that looks like kind of like a fisherman's or angler's vest. And then there's phase change material, PCM. That's a cooling technology that comes in a couple of different temperatures. And we're going to talk about the advantages of that technology. That can go in the refrigerator. It doesn't have to go in the freezer. Or we have products that reactivate at room temperature that don't require any refrigeration at all. So let's go to the next slide and talk about these types. So airflow as well, a lot of you know about those. They're used in surgery and operating rooms, but you have to be plugged into something or have a battery pack for those to work. So they're not that convenient for a lot of workplaces. So we're not even going to highlight that as much today. Water flow as well, highly specialized, not really usable in the modern workplace. So let's talk about evaporative vests, the pros of evaporated vests. First of all, they're really easy to use. We've seen them on the workplace. You don't have to put them in a refrigerator or freezer. You just dump them into water. They're pretty lightweight, although once you dunk them in the water, they can get to be quite weighty. But they also can recharge very quickly, but you have to have access to a bucket of water for that to happen. The cons of these are they require access to water, which is what I mentioned. You need like a cooler of water, a bucket of water. They maintain their cool for relatively short periods of time, which means you have to dunk them in again. And if it's high humidity, they don't work as well as other types of cooling vests. They also need that airflow evaporation or they can't work. So if you're wearing them under your PPE or a safety vest, then they're not an appropriate solution for your workplace. Next slide. So ice-based vests. The pros of these vests are they do cool down very rapidly, but they're going to feel extremely cool to the worker and in some cases feel shockingly cold. They are effective under PPE in that they do not need evaporation. And they can be easy to swap out with new ice packs, which fit into those specialized compartments. So the disadvantage of these is they require access to a freezer for these cooling pods to work. So if you're out on a work site, if you don't have a freezer or a bucket that has ice or ice products in it, it's very difficult for these to be reactivated. They're also quite heavy, which means that workers are less likely to comply and use this particular solution. Because they're ice-based, there's also a risk to skin and tissue damage and a risk of frostbite. So these have to be used in extremely careful conditions. So with ice-based products, that also causes vasoconstriction, which means your blood vessels shrink, and that can cause your blood or your sweat glands then to close off as well. And the cooling time is relatively short because of the large temperature differential, and also the fact that most workers don't want to use them because they feel extremely cold for a short period of time. Next slide. Gel-based are similar to ice packs, rapid cool down. We can go through these pretty quickly. They're effective under PPE. They work about the same as the ice packs. Some of the other cons of these also similar. They require access to a freezer. They're quite heavy. You can have a risk of frostbite and again, closure of the sweat glands. So the cooling vests that we make and recommend are made with a phase change material. So phase change material was developed to overcome the disadvantage of ice. And this is what a cooling vest made from phase change material looks like. Phase change material, unlike ice, can be really cold at what is room temperature. In this case, in the plant here, probably about 70 degrees, and these will reactivate at any temperature under 80 degrees. We also make them in 58. Next slide. Next bullet, please. So these are made with a plant-based technology. So unlike ice or gels, these can reactivate in two different temperatures. The most common temperature is 58 for cooling injuries, but 80 degrees is great because your body temp is 99 degrees. So you'll feel comfortably cool without that ice cold effect. So the advantage of these are they melt at a higher temperature, so they're going to actually stay colder longer, and they can reactivate in an air-conditioned vehicle, in an air-conditioned break room, or out on a work site in a cooler that it has actually bags of ice in it, but it will only get to that 58 or 80 degree temperature depending on the product. So there's no risk of frostburn or ice bite with that. Next slide. So the pros of these: safe to wear directly on the skin, no risk of ice burn or frostbite. You can wear these under your PPE because they do not require that circulating air to make them work. They only need refrigeration, not freezing, if you're using the 58 degree vest, or the 80 degree product, as I mentioned, will reactivate in room temperature. This will stay cool at a single temperature, which is how the physics of phase change material work. The cons of this product, depending on the design, cooling packs can be bulky with certain phase change material vests. Now, that's not the technology that we have. Our products are a single product that have a single welded, wearable, anatomically designed product. These can be more expensive than other cooling vests, depending on the brand that you go with. And depending on the particular design, they might not be as form-fitting, but we'll show you our product which actually does conform. So this is an example of a really ugly looking phase change material vest that's not really form-fitting. It looks kind of almost like a cartoon worn over the body versus a product that's really anatomically designed. Next slide. So here's the different types of advantages for each of the cooling vests. With all four of these different ones, you get the heat stress relief. It's just to varying degrees. Most of them contain non-toxic products in them, with the exception of gel packs. Only two of them are safe to wear directly on the skin, the PCM and the evaporative. Ice and gel packs, you need to have a layer between. PCM and evaporative are also both typically safe for long duration treatment, whereas ice and gel packs need to be cycled on and off. PCM absorbs heat during the melting. So does ice, although, as I mentioned, ice will be at a very extreme temperature compared to PCM. So all of these have very different advantages to them, depending on what product or technology that you're looking for. Most of them are safe to use in the workplace, if you look at the bottom one, with the exception of ice, which can have slip and fall risks, as well as some of the evaporative vests that you dump in a pool of water. Next slide. Okay, so the differences between 58 and 80 degree cooling vests. 58 degree products reactivate in a refrigerator or a cooler of ice, and they maintain that constant temperature. We see 58 degrees more in extreme heat situations like metal casting plants, foundries, out on oil refineries, oil rigs, whereas in most industrial settings, 80 degrees is a preferred product because of the advantages of it. So if you please put up the bullets, that recharges at normal room temperatures. So again, no need to refrigerate it, maintains a constant 80 degrees, and it's very well tolerated against the skin, and it gives you that preventing heat stress versus feeling really cold and uncomfortable. 80 degrees also has a smaller temperature differential to the body's actual body temperature, so that will result in longer term cooling using that particular product. So these are the technology that I just showed you. These are fully integrated vests, so there's no ice packs to keep track of. These are all designed in a fully formed wearable therapy. And one size really does fit all, or most. We say we actually make extra large straps for people that are over 300 pounds, but if you're under 300 pounds, one size fits really everybody. They have Velcro straps so that you can easily fit them to your own body type. And for another safety feature too, if you're in an industrial setting where you're using forklifts and other things, another safety feature that is required is a tearaway feature. So if you're using other vests that can't be torn away and you get hung up on something, that can pose additional safety risks beyond the cooling that is necessary. So these are available both in khaki and in black, as well as the two temperatures that I described, and they're made in Red Wing, Minnesota. Our supply chain is completely sourced in the USA, and so we don't have any worries about accessing the materials and goods that we need, and we're ready for high heat season already. So the other thing I want to talk about quickly is hats. A lot of people wear hats in the workplace. Some people have to wear hats that are safety, like hard hats. So we have technology that actually will fit into a hard hat. This is our 80 degree product, and we also make it in 58 degrees. So for hard hat use or baseball caps, we offer cooling hats, cooling cap inserts as well, which are really easy to use, and workers are very likely to comply with this technology because it fits right inside their hat, and it fits inside any hat that you would have. So next slide. So as we recommend different protocols, people ask us, how many vests should we have on site? We recommend having at least one cooling vest for every 3 workers at a work site, because these will then reactivate and people will kind of swap them in and out. The products already have an antimicrobial coating on them, so they can be used by multiple employees. But at a work site, we typically just use one of those wipes, like a disinfectant wipe, to wipe off the product in between workers. We recommend issuing 2 of the cooling caps for every worker, so they can constantly be swiping those in and out and using them inside their cap. So the gold standard for worker safety is at least 1 Safety Pro Cool vest and 2 caps, plus the water, shade breaks, and other things that we've talked about today. Next slide. So when we talk about safety, it's safety plus heat stress prevention. In our minds, cooling phase change material represents the best opportunity to cool the chest and core area to guard against heat stress and to prevent heat strokes and heat exhaustion from happening. The cooling on these products lasts anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, which is highly dependent on the ambient temperature. And then it will reactivate at any temperature below 80 degrees or in the refrigerator if you pick the 58-degree product. The cooling hat inserts stay cool anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and then they reactivate or recool within 15 to 20 minutes. And as I mentioned with the 80-degree products, those will reactivate at any temperature below 80 degrees, making it very easy to use on the work site. Next slide. So that's our cooling solutions for heat stress and workplace injuries in the workplace. And we just wanted to show you some of the new technology that's out there. I think Melissa can tell you that she's been to a lot of safety conferences, a lot of safety shows. I have as well. Nobody is making a product that is just like this. That's a fully formed wearable therapy. There's lots of other cooling vests on the market. You just have to determine what's going to be best for your workers. The final question that I usually get asked is, how heavy are these? They are under 4 pounds, so they're really light and easy to use. And they come in separate panels. So if you need to clean them, they come apart very easily for cleaning and reactivating. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time as well. But thank you for the opportunity to talk about Onyx Cool today, Melissa.
Yeah, well, I think that since I've tried these products on and I've seen other products in the marketplace, what I like when I'm working with at the construction companies or at the foundries is that you can't tell by looking at it, but there is some give a little bit in the material and in the packet, so it doesn't feel so like hard to the skin. It conforms a little bit better. And I've also heard people really love the hard hat insert because that just seems so easy, right? And they can just switch it in and switch it out. So we will end up sending all this information out to everybody that signed up and those that signed up but couldn't come today, because we really think it's important information. Again, it's budget season, so we wanted to make sure this information gets out there. But also, I think it's really important to look at what is out there, what is the technology for keeping people cool. And, you know, National OSHA thought this was important enough, again, to bring it up again, to make, you know, additions to their NEP program. And this was their big focus of 2023 and moving into 2024. So we just thought it was really important to show you guys what's out there, because we know people will be more compliant with the technology. Sometimes they don't have to think about it, because when we get into tasks, we don't drink as much as we should. So what can we do to really hit people, give them something that's effective and that's going to work? So that's why we wanted to get in front of you guys today and give you this information. I always learn something when I hear Tammy talk. I didn't know the difference with all these things that were out there, right? They are not all created the same or created equal. So hopefully everybody got some really great information. If there's any last questions, either throw those in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to send out our contact information, and you can definitely connect with Tammy. Just, you know, try a sample, learn more. But now is the time of year to prepare for if and when it's warm again. No, it's going to come back again.
One thing I wanted to mention too that I don't know if people are aware of, but the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Activities and Safety Program audits, they offer up to $10,000 for Minnesota businesses to do an audit and get recommendations about what kind of controls they want to put into place. So that grant program is an excellent thing to look into if you're looking for resources to help pay for some of these technology solutions or administrative or procedural controls.
Absolutely. Well, we're here for you a little bit early because we're efficient. That's why we're good at what we do. We're efficient. So thanks for your time today, Tammy. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. And we'll be doing more educational webinars in 2024. So keep checking back with us. Check out on our website and our newsletter to make sure you can see what up-to-date topics we're going to be bringing to you next.